Welcome back to True God Code. If you are coming from part 1, you have just seen the documented record, the network, the funding, the companies, the connections, all of it sourced from court records, DOJ releases, confirmed journalism, and corporate filings. Now we are going to show you how True God Code reads that record through the biblical prophetic framework we have spent years assembling. This is part 2, and part 2 sounds different from part 1. Part 1 established facts, part 2 makes a case. When we say the text says, we mean the text says that, and we will show you the verse. When we say we believe or the framework sees, we mean this is our interpretation, our reading, our conclusion drawn from the evidence. We are going to be clear about which is which throughout. What we believe is that the infrastructure documented in part 1 is not coincidental. We believe it is the specific architecture the biblical prophetic texts describe as present in the final generation. We are going to build that case company by company, scripture by scripture, from the ground up. If you have not watched part 1, go watch it first. The link is in the description. What follows will not carry its full weight without the foundation under it. Subscribe, like, and share before we begin. Part 2 is where everything documented in part 1 meets the ancient text. You want to get this in front of people you care about. Let's open the record and open the text together. Section 1. The identification layer. In part 1 we documented this. 23andMe has collected the voluntary DNA submissions of over 30 million people. Jeffrey Epstein, the man whose network seeded the entire pipeline, distributed 23andMe testing kits to his contacts the way most people hand out business cards. He enrolled himself in the personal genome project at Harvard. He funded the foundational science of large-scale genome analysis to the tune of $6.5 million at Harvard alone. The company is currently in bankruptcy proceedings. Its genome database, the biological signatures of 30 million human beings, is its primary asset. It is about to be acquired by someone. Here is what True God Code believes the text says about this. Daniel 2:43. Daniel is interpreting a prophetic vision of the final world empire, the last system of human power before the kingdom of God is established on earth. The text describes that empire this way: they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. The Hebrew grammatical form used here is the hitpal stem. We have spent considerable time in this text. The hitpal indicates reflexive action with an external agent initiating. It is not passive mingling. It is an active, initiated intrusion into the human seed line from outside. We believe the identification layer, the mapping of the human genome at population scale, is the prerequisite for what Daniel 2:43 describes. You cannot mingle with what you have not mapped. You cannot target a seed line you have not identified. The 30 million genome database is, in the TGC framework's reading, the intelligence file for the program Daniel saw in vision, and the man who seeded it is the same man whose network built every layer that follows. To make the identification layer concrete, population-scale genomics links markers to ancestry, disease risk, and familial networks. The framework sees this as pre-targeting, pinpointing seed lines, clusters, and lineages at resolution unimaginable a decade ago. On Daniel 2:43, the hitpal stem implies a self-involving action initiated by an external agent. Our read: it is deliberate engagement with the human seed line, not happenstance mixing. The identification layer enables that deliberateness. Therefore, a 30 million person genome file is not merely medical data. It is a routing table. It tells any future system where to aim, whom to group, and how to personalize. Identification precedes intrusion. Mapping precedes mingling. Section 2, the delivery layer. In part 1, we documented this. Minicircle is a gene therapy company operating today outside FDA jurisdiction through international clinics. A single injection delivers a stripped-down piece of synthetic DNA beneath the skin. That DNA travels to the cell nucleus and instructs the cell to produce a specified protein for up to 12 months. One injection, 1 year of expression. No detectable modification in standard genomic screening. No edit signature. The payload operates silently for a year and leaves no forensic trace in routine testing. The company describes its platform as exponentially scalable. Its investors include Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI and primary architect of Project Stargate, who has personally invested $250,000, confirmed to MIT Technology Review. Its investors also include Peter Thiel, co-founder of Palantir. The Harvard geneticist Epstein funded for years consulted on its development. As of April 2025, approximately 500 human beings have received it. Here is what True God Code believes the text says about this. Matthew 24:37. Jesus is identifying the specific marker of the final generation. He says, "As it was in the days of Noah, so will it be at the coming of the Son of Man." The days of Noah in Genesis 6 were defined by one overriding condition. A non-human intelligence initiated intrusion into the human biological domain, specifically into the reproductive and genetic domain. The result was the corruption of the human seed line at a level that required divine intervention to reset. We believe Jesus was not using the days of Noah as a poetic illustration. We believe he was giving a precise identification marker. When you see the conditions of Genesis 6, the active intrusion into the human genetic domain, not supernaturally this time, but institutionally and technologically, you are looking at the generation he was describing. Minicircle delivers genetic instructions into the human cell nucleus, sustained, non-detectable, scalable to the entire population. We believe this is the mechanism Matthew 24:37 is identifying in modern institutional form. We want to be clear. We are not saying Minicircle's founders know they are fulfilling this prophecy. We are saying the pattern Jesus identified is present in the infrastructure that has been built. Mechanically, Minicircle DNA remains episomal, outside the chromosomes yet inside the nucleus. It persists for months, instructing cells to express a protein, then gradually degrades. Standard clinical sequencing often shows no edit signature because the genome itself was never cut. Operationally, clinics intake a patient, select a payload, and courier a small ring of synthetic DNA manufactured in a lab. The vial arrives cold, the injection is subcutaneous, and expression begins within days. No operating room, no permanent implant. Published examples include EPO for red blood cell production, FGF21 for metabolic control, and myostatin inhibitors for muscle growth. The risks are real: off-target physiology, uncontrolled duration, and immune responses to the expressed protein. Why this matters to the framework: a silent year-long genetic instruction enables population-scale trials outside traditional regulators. When paired with identification and manufacturing layers, delivery can be targeted, repeated, and scaled. Section 3, the scaling layer. In Part 1, we documented this. Project Stargate is a $500 billion artificial intelligence infrastructure program announced at the White House in January 2025. At the launch event, Oracle Chairman Larry Ellison publicly described, in his own words on camera at the White House, the following specific capability. Take any person's genome. Sequence the relevant genetic markers. Use artificial intelligence to design a personalized genetic payload targeting that specific person's biology. Manufacture that payload using robotic systems. Deliver it within 48 hours. Operationally, a case begins when a hospital or payer uploads target sequences. Orchestration pipelines dispatch compute, models select loci, and design tools output candidate DNA or mRNA payloads within minutes, templated for rapid manufacturing. Robotic biofoundries print oligos, assemble rings, run QC by real-time sequencing, then sterile fill-finish and label. Cold chain and chain of custody are logged end-to-end for a 48-hour courier window. At scale, the same line can manufacture non-oncology payloads, metabolic regulators, neuromodulators, or immune instructions. The factory remains agnostic. It produces whatever instruction the system specifies. The framework's read. Scaling collapses latency between identification and action. Personalized instructions or edits can be designed, built, and queued continuously. Targeted, rapid, and repeatable across a population. Ellison described this as a cancer treatment system. The technology does not distinguish between a cancer-fighting payload and any other payload. It produces what it is instructed to produce. 20 data centers are currently under construction in Texas. NVIDIA's genome analysis tools compress whole genome sequencing from days to hours. The factory is being built. Here is what True God Code believes the text says about this. Genesis 11:6. God observes the builders of Babel and says, "Indeed the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do." Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. We are not building a full Babel parallel here. But we want to note what the text identifies as the critical threshold, the moment when a unified program of human ambition reaches the capability where nothing it proposes will be withheld. The Stargate infrastructure, the ability to sequence any genome, design any payload, and manufacture it within 48 hours, represents that kind of threshold moment in the genetic domain. More directly, returning to Daniel 2:43, the framework sees Stargate as the manufacturing and scaling layer for what Daniel described. The mingling with the seed of men requires not just identification and not just a delivery mechanism, it requires the ability to do it at civilizational scale. Personalized, rapidly, continuously. That capability is being built right now. Announced publicly at the White House. Section 4. The permanent editing layer. In Part 1, we documented this. CRISPR is a gene editing technology that permanently rewrites specific sequences in human DNA. It was co-discovered by Jennifer Doudna, who sat on the advisory board of the Milner Foundation that co-invested in Altos Labs. The first CRISPR therapy received FDA approval in December 2023. Peer-reviewed research published in 2024 confirmed that Minicircle DNA vectors are now being used as delivery vehicles for CRISPR base editors, meaning the sustained expression, non-detectable delivery mechanism and the permanent editing mechanism have merged into a single system. Altos Labs, founded at a private meeting at Yuri Milner's estate, funded at $3 billion by Milner and Jeff Bezos, is advancing cellular reprogramming technology toward human trials. Its scientific advisory board is chaired by the Nobel laureate who discovered how to reprogram adult cells back into a stem cell-like state, capable of becoming any cell type. Human trials began August 2025. Here is what True God Code believes the text says about this. Daniel 2:43, again, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. The TGC framework's reading of this text is that the final empire is not merely characterized by temporary genetic influence, but by a program of permanent biological alteration of the human seed line. CRISPR delivers permanent heritable modification. Altos Labs is advancing the technology to reprogram the cellular aging process, to alter what a human cell fundamentally is and does. When Minicircle delivers CRISPR into the cell, the delivery mechanism degrades, the edit remains. Permanently. In the genome, that person will pass to their children. We believe this is the permanent layer of what Daniel 2:43 describes. And we believe the convergence of these technologies, non-detectable delivery, permanent editing, cellular reprogramming, is not happening by coincidence in the same generation, funded by the same network, seeded by the same man. Technically, permanent editing now spans base editing and prime editing. Minicircle vectors can carry these editors into the nucleus for sustained activity, then degrade, while the written change remains in the genome. Early studies paired AAV and Minicircle systems. The end result is the same, edits that persist through cell divisions. Regulators are approving in vivo edits for specific diseases, but permanence means risks, off-target sites, mosaic outcomes, and p53 pathway activation. Once an edit lands in a long-lived tissue, reversal is not trivial. Permanence is the defining difference between instruction and alteration. The framework's read, when delivery hands CRISPR the pen, the page becomes human DNA. After delivery fades, the letters remain and replicate. That is the permanent layer we map to Daniel 2:43. Not temporary influence, but enduring biological change that propagates forward. Section 5, the biometric identity layer. In Part 1, we documented this. Formerly WorldCoin, was co-founded by Sam Altman in 2019. It scans human irises using a device called the Orb, generating a unique encrypted iris code tied to a blockchain-based global digital identity. The iris is unique and unchangeable, more specific than a fingerprint. Once linked globally to a financial system, it cannot be undone. World has partnered with Visa to create the World Card, a payment card linked to the iris scan identity, usable anywhere. Visa is accepted globally. 26 million users as of April 2026, 160 countries. The stated goal is 1 billion. The woman who served as Jeffrey Epstein's personal publicist from 2017 now runs a venture capital fund that has invested in World. That connection is documented. Here is what True God Code believes the text says about this. Revelation 13:16-17. John writes, "He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark." We want to be honest about how we read this text. We are not saying World is definitively the mark of the beast. We are saying this. The text describes a specific system with specific characteristics, a universal identity mechanism, a physical or biometric marker tied to a person's body, and the ability to buy and sell, gated behind that identifier, meaning full participation in the global economy, flows through it. The world system has every structural characteristic the text describes: biometric, tied to the body, universal in stated ambition, connected through the World Card directly to the global buy and sell infrastructure via Visa. We believe this is the most precise real-world match to the Revelation 13 system that has ever existed. We hold that as the framework's interpretation, and a strong one in our assessment, not as established prophetic fact. But we want you to look at the characteristics the text gives, and look at the system that has been built, and ask yourself whether the correspondence is coincidental. We do not believe it is. Operationally, the orb captures an iris pattern and computes an iris code, an irreversible hash stored against a unique ID, not the raw image. Linking that ID to wallets or accounts centralizes identity at the biometric layer. Liveness checks and anti-spoofing resist photos and masks, but risks remain. Enrollment compromise, coercion, or database correlation across services can extend control far beyond a simple login. On-ramps already exist: the World Card with Visa, SDKs for apps, and merchant APIs. Once payments, benefits, and access points bind to the identifier, opting out becomes costly. The framework's read: when identity binds to the body and commerce binds to identity, buy and sell gating becomes a configuration choice, not a hypothetical. That is why we map World to Revelation 13's architecture. Section 6, the Covenant Layer. In Part 1, we documented this. The Board of Peace was chartered at the World Economic Forum in Davos on January 22, 2026. It carries United Nations Security Council authorization, Resolution 2803, passed 13-0. Its executive board includes Donald Trump as chairman, Jared Kushner, Marco Rubio, Tony Blair, World Bank President Ajay Banga, and Apollo Global Management CEO Mark Rowan. Its mandate has been explicitly expanded beyond Gaza to global conflicts. Trump has described it as potentially replacing the United Nations. The succession clause in its charter states that Trump's replacement as chairman can only occur through voluntary resignation or incapacity, and that the successor will be designated by Trump himself, not elected, designated. Apollo Global Management, whose CEO sits on the Board of Peace Executive Board, was co-founded by Leon Black, who paid Epstein $170 million for personal financial services, and Josh Harris, who had documented personal correspondence with Epstein and met with him at the Manhattan townhouse alongside Bill Gates. The CEO of the World Economic Forum, the institution that hosted the Board of Peace's chartering, exchanged over 120 emails and text messages with Epstein and attended multiple dinner parties at his townhouse. Here is what True God Code believes the text says about this. Daniel 9:27. He shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. The Hebrew word is hagber, to confirm, strengthen, make prevail. Not to create from scratch. To take something that already exists and elevate it to a new level of authority and scope. The Abraham Accords, built by Jared Kushner between 2020 and 2021, established the Covenant Foundation. The Board of Peace is, in the TGC framework's reading, the structure through which that foundation will be confirmed, strengthened, and expanded into the covenant with the many that Daniel describes. The many, the Hebrew rabbim, is not a vague reference. It describes a specific plurality of nations. The Board of Peace has 25-plus member nations, UN Security Council authorization, and an expanding global mandate. The succession mechanism is the detail the framework finds most significant. Daniel 8 describes the little horn, the figure who confirms and then breaks the covenant at the midpoint of the 70th week, as rising not by his own power, not by election, not by conquest, but through a designated transfer of authority. The Board of Peace Charter literally encodes that mechanism. The Great Horn designates a successor. The Great Horn exits. The designated successor inherits a UN-authorized multinational covenant body without a single vote being cast. We believe this is the most structurally precise, real-world match to the Daniel 9:27 covenant framework that has ever been documented. We present it as the framework's reading, a reading we hold with high confidence, and we ask you to assess whether the structural correspondence between the text and the institution is as precise as we believe it is. To clarify the covenant scope, the Board of Peace coordinates ceasefires, reconstruction funds, and security guarantees under one umbrella. Its resolutions bind participating nations through memoranda implemented by existing ministries, defense, finance, and foreign affairs, without creating a new parliament. Mechanically, the succession clause matters because it centralizes continuity. If a chairman exits, authority passes by designation instantly, keeping financing, command chains, and mandates intact. That is confirmation by structure, not just by speech. Our read of Daniel 9:27 hinges on Higbir, strengthen what exists. The Abraham Accords established recognition, corridors, and technology cooperation. A UN-authorized body extending, funding, and enforcing those corridors is, functionally, strengthening a pre-existing covenant, risks and signals we watch, emergency powers attached to enforcement, 7-year budgeting windows, and covenant language binding many. If those converge under the Board of Peace, the framework marks a threshold toward the Daniel timeline. Section 7. How it connects back. Now let us pull the threads together. Epstein seeded the genome identification layer, funding the science, distributing the kits, cultivating the researchers. The researchers he funded built the foundational work that the genome database and the genetic modification pipeline rest on. The network he built and connected went on to construct every layer we have just mapped. Sam Altman connected to Epstein's network through the Edge Foundation Circle. Co-founded World, the biometric identity layer the framework maps to Revelation 13. And personally invested in Minicircle, the delivery layer the framework maps to Matthew 24:37. To connect Altman's roles, World operationalizes biometric identity, while Minicircle operationalizes genetic delivery. When identity and delivery mature alongside rapid manufacturing, the pipeline links the person you are to the instructions your cells receive. That is the structural bridge the framework flags. Peter Thiel, introduced to Epstein by Reid Hoffman with $40 million of Epstein capital flowing into his venture fund, co-founded Palantir, the population data analytics platform, and invested in Minicircle. Palantir-type analytics fuse medical claims, sensor exhaust, and identity graphs into risk scores and targeting cohorts. In the framework's read, that is the orchestration substrate, deciding which populations are identified, queued, and prioritized for instruction or edit. Yuri Milner, present at the deliberately hidden 2014 Edge Foundation event alongside Epstein, Bezos, Brin, and Page, co-founded Altos Labs, the cellular reprogramming operation the framework maps to the permanent alteration layer of Daniel 2:43. Altos Labs advances cellular reprogramming, altering cell fate and aging pathways. When permanent editors ride year-long delivery, reprogramming shifts from theory to programmable outcome. That, in our reading, is the permanent layer Daniel's line anticipates. Jeff Bezos, at multiple Edge Foundation events with Epstein, co-invested $3 billion in Altos Labs alongside Milner. The Board of Peace, chartered at the World Economic Forum, whose CEO had 120-plus documented communications with Epstein, includes on its executive board the CEO of a firm whose co-founders had documented personal financial relationships with Epstein. We are not saying these men are consciously building a prophetic system. We are saying the network Epstein assembled, the science he funded, the connections he forged, and the infrastructure subsequently built by that network correspond, in the TGC framework's assessment, to the specific prophetic architecture the biblical texts describe for the final generation. So the map back to the seed. Identification locates, analytics selects, manufacturing produces, delivery writes temporarily, or hands the pen to CRISPR, and reprogramming makes permanence practical. The covenant and biometric layers stabilize governance and access around it. We believe this correspondence is too precise to be coincidental. Let us be direct. If the TGC framework's reading is correct, and we believe it is, then the generation alive right now is living inside the prophetic window the biblical texts have been describing for 2,500 years. The identification layer is built, the delivery mechanism is deployed, the scaling infrastructure is under construction, the biometric identity system has 26 million users and is growing, the covenant body has United Nations authorization. This is not a warning about something coming, it is an assessment of something already here. Practically, clarity means sober watchfulness, not fear. Weigh technologies, policies, and incentives against the pattern we have mapped. Measure headlines against the text before reacting, and keep your heart steady. Guard your gates. Biometric enrollment, genomic sharing, and always-on sensors bind identity to access. Choose carefully what you link to your name, your eyes, and your blood. Wisdom begins with deliberate consent. Build refuges, families, churches, and small communities that care, share skills, and anchor truth. Courage grows where people stand together, pray together, and practice discernment together. For the Christian, this is not a moment for fear. The same texts that describe this infrastructure also describe its end. Daniel 2:44 says, "The God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed." Revelation 19 describes the return. The framework's 7 streams, documented across 19 independent lines of evidence converging on 2033, point to a specific window. The pipeline being built is real. The one it is being built against is more real. What the Christian does with this information is not panic. It is clarity. Clarity about the time. Clarity about what is being asked of this generation. And clarity about the one in whom the answer to every layer of this program has already been secured. For the person watching who does not hold a biblical framework, we ask only this. Look at what has been documented in these 2 videos. Look at the infrastructure that exists. Ask yourself whether the world your children are inheriting has been built by people with your interests in mind. And then, if you have never opened the text that described this moment 2,000 years before the internet existed, consider opening it. While the screen fades, let these words settle. The evidence has been laid out. The patterns are visible. Consider what it means for your life, your family, and your hope. Seek truth, weigh the record, and decide with clear eyes. Thank you for watching both parts of the program. This research exists because the time is short and the information is real. If these 2 videos showed you something worth sharing, share them. Every person who sees this clearly is one more person who can respond to the moment with their eyes open. Like the video, subscribe to True God Code, hit the bell. This concludes our research summary. We have outlined the framework, the evidence, and why it matters. Thank you for watching and for sharing this with those you care about.